We're back. It's a very distinct pleasure to say we are joined by a man I've gotten to know recently and have had the privilege of interviewing on a previous occasion here at Securing America, but I'm very happy to have a chance to visit with once again, having heard him conducting a terrific interview recently with my friend and now his, Steve Bannon, in the course of which he talked about not only his personal experience with building the Navy's budget when he was serving as a captain in the United States Navy, but also some of the implications of the inflation disaster that is now upon all of us. We're all feeling it, but the military is going to feel it in a very pronounced way as well. His name is Captain Hung Kao. He is um, a veteran now, having recently retired from the Navy after 2 decades of service there, as I recall. He has been a special operator, a deep sea diving one at that, a very hazardous line of work, and one in which he has both served and commanded with very considerable distinction. He's happening, as it happens, running for Congress at the moment, and we're going to visit with him about some of the things that have impelled him to do so. It's a delight to have you back, Captain Hung Kao. Welcome once again to Securing America.
Frankie, thank you so much for having me today. It's always a pleasure to speak with you.
And for me too. I wanted to start with what you talked about with Steve, and that is given what is now being calculated to be the impact of inflation on the Navy's and the rest of the military's budget this year. What is the difference between what was budgeted for inflationary creep and what is actually befalling the U.S. Defense Department?
Well, thank you so much for having me on that. Again, I had the I don't want to say pleasure of having to write the Navy's budget for 2 years. It's a wish I would never wish on anybody else.
Hard work.
It's yes, sir. It's painful days and nights at the Pentagon. But everybody's always picking on the DoD. It's like the chubby kid that everybody wants to pick on because they're like, oh, you get all this money. Because you understand the $4 trillion in our national budget, a lot of it is fenced off for a lot of social programs that they just won't. They will never
What are
touch
called
it to. Yes,
entitlements.
sir.
Right.
Yeah, and so the only thing left is really the DoD budget, which is $700 billion. But most of that is also fenced off as well because it's about manpower, it's training, it's upkeeping for our people. It costs a lot for medical and moving people every 2 years, and so then you're
But
left
it's
with a
still
small sliver.
considered more discretionary spending.
Yes, sir, it is.
And certainly there are a couple of key parts of the budget that are especially so. And I think where you're going with this is those are likely to be most adversely impacted
Exactly.
by inflationary creep, right?
So every year when we write the budget, we expect a 2% inflation increase. But this year, right now, we're at 8.5%. So that's a 6.5 delta. And that in a $700 billion budget, that equates to about $46 billion. And in terms of ships and aircraft, we're talking about 4 aircraft carriers, or that's the same as 38 guided missile destroyers, or 335 F-35 Joint Strike Fighters. So these are the things we need out there in the South China Sea to patrol really the to conduct the Freedom of Navigation Act, and it's going to adversely affect our military because our ships are old, right? The Ticonderoga class cruisers are very old. A friend of mine just relinquished command of USS Normandy, and while he commanded that ship, he was underway probably a total of 2 weeks because when they went into yards, they came out of yards and they found holes in the fuel tanks because again, a 50, 60-year-old ship is going to have a lot of wear and tear. Salt water doesn't do well with metal, and so these ships are getting old and we need to replace them. And we can't replace them because we're hamstrung by a budget that 16 years of continuing resolutions. And with continuing resolutions, you can't do new starts. You can't start new projects for modernization or looking at new development of hypersonic weapons. Those are things we need in order to fight the next war.
Let me just explain this a little bit with you. A continuing resolution is a often called a stopgap spending bill. It's because Congress can't do the job properly most years of getting the annual authorization and appropriations measures passed, even for the Defense Department, which I consider to be, and I think most of us do, absolutely critical to our national, well, security, obviously, but national interest. And what you're saying is that when you use that stopgap arrangement, you cannot put new things into the budget. You have to just continue doing what you've been doing more or less at the steady state. It's hard probably for the layperson to appreciate how devastating that is. Another piece of this, which I know you've been very concerned about and talking about a lot, is the importance of actually having some certitude in the planning process. A 2 year budget rather than an annual churn is vital, as well, among other things, defense contractors make plans for what they're going to manufacture so that they can keep the costs relatively stable and manageable, as opposed to the herky jerky of a more erratic budgeting process. When you put all this together, Captain Cow, it sounds as though it's a formula for a less ready force, a force that has less modern equipment, and is not engaged in the kind of research and development that will keep us qualitatively, if not quantitatively, superior to our adversaries.
No, you're
Have
absolutely
I
right.
got that right?
Yes, you're absolutely right. So, the by the time they gave us the budget this year, it's at the mid-year execution mark. So, the fiscal year, the military fiscal year goes from October to October, right? So halfway through in March, basically, uh, we have benchmarks we have to meet. Hey, you have to meet, you have to spend so much money by the mid-year. But this year got the budget after the mid-year mark. So now they're hitting us because we didn't meet the um, the mid-year benchmarks, and it's like, wait, you just gave us the money. I don't care. You missed the mark. I mean, like, and then not only that, so the defense industry, their fiscal year starts in June, right? June to June.
Captain, I have to ask you to hold the thought. I apologize. We've run over time. Let me just take a quick break. We'll be right back with more with Captain Hung Kao right after this.